Millar es el director ejecutivo de Global Village Governance Limited, Gobernabilidad de la Aldea Global, organización que presta asesoría a los gobiernos de Nueva Zelanda y a varios países alrededor del mundo. Trabaja en la implementación de tecnologías de la comunicación para el desarrollo organizacional y el cambio social. Cuenta con 35 años de experiencia en dirección ejecutiva, consultoría y manejo de programas en el sector público y privado en países como Nueva Zelanda, Australia, Asia, Estados Unidos y Europa.
Even sure where it came from. Ever since we've had government agencies, I think the demand has always been there, is moving from measuring things that are easy to measure. So for instance, in a health environment, we started off measuring the number of nurses or the number of doctors or the number of patient beds. That's what we call inputs. The number of hip replacements that we did, or the number of operations for cancer. The health system isn't about doing operations. The health system is about healthier communities. It's still proving very difficult. The paradox is, the irony is, the more important something is to measure and to evaluate, the harder it is to do. In New Zealand, we've got a very formally devolved government system. So firstly, the bureaucracy is politically independent, and it operates independently of politicians, of the heads of our government agencies. That's all done within the bureaucracy itself. My job as the Deputy Commissioner was to assess the performance of those individual agencies and how they did organise their organisation to do the work that needed to be done, the outputs that they produced. And this is the amount of money that government is going to give me in order to do these things. And then within that, the Chief Executive, we assessed his performance or her performance once a year to check to make sure that they were on track. And then that takes us to what we call the level of outputs. In other words, what does the department produce, or children through school or whatever. Performance management. What is the impact of doing that? Why are we doing this? And what are the outcomes that we're hoping to achieve? So for instance, in the natural resources area, they have a common set of outcomes that they're looking for, which is a green, sustainable environment across the whole of the natural resources that make up New Zealand. As well as assessing the performance of each individual agency, we assess how effectively that group of agencies is achieving those outcomes. Most of the design process has come from what we call the centre of government and the Treasury, who are the ones that look after the money. They in turn have a community that they deliver their outcomes for. When we assess the performance of the Chief Executive each year, we typically gather information from all the relevant stakeholders involved in that organisation. So for instance, in the education sector, occasionally groups of students to help us assess how well the Ministry of Education was performing their responsibility. The technical design of the monitoring and evaluation system is something that's quite a rare and rarefied art. It's naturally respond to when you're looking at monitoring and evaluation environment or whatever. It's quite a specialised task. The core bureaucracy with getting information from informants as possible. I think the stakeholders need to be involved when you're applying the system rather than when you're designing the system in the first place. The selection process is quite inclusive. My view has always been what we're trying to do is to get the best informed judgment that we can make. So what I've always looked for is a wide range of different perspectives in order to help us understand effectiveness of the programme from as many different perspectives as possible. So people who have been in hospital are very good at telling you how effective the hospital is. In the private sector, you spend a lot of time doing customer research. In a lot of organisations we use staff engagement. My view's always been a stakeholder that's been identified. What technology has now done for us is made us realise that evaluation isn't something that just has to be done by government. We are now all very familiar with social media tools that allow people to say to a large people who bought this book, people who played this game. The technology now allows us to tap into the wisdom of the crowds. So no longer do we have to just design our evaluation systems. There's a whole range of different sources of knowledge and information about the performance of parts of the sector. And we have a collection of professionals whose job it is, once every 3 years, to visit that school. They publish a report. That's conventional monitoring and evaluation technique. Now that we've got powerful enough technology, can quite rapidly build a story about how effective schools are at improving the performance of children over time, but somehow has less legitimacy than this, but both of them together give us a much richer picture than we're going to get from either this one or this one. Over the years, we've been trying to work out why people die in road accidents, and so we've built up a very big database. We analyse those, and we've analysed them over time. For a long time, our focus was on alcohol-related. 80% of all deaths in road accidents had alcohol as a cause. So over a period of about 20 years, what we did through realising the volume of deaths was caused by alcohol. So we now have to do another campaign that says, how do we get people to realise that driving fast is going to kill people? Changing the way that you make your laws. We've now, just this week, we have discovered that from the data we're noticing a big rise. As a result of the data, the causes of accidents, we have interventions to try and deal with that so that we can have what the ultimate aim is safer roads. In New Zealand, people do not like to pay tax, but government needs tax in order to be able to do all the things that we have elected governments to do. And we make it as easy as possible for the people that want to play by the rules to pay tax. We help them not actually have to do anything about paying tax because it's deducted from their salary. They also have a facility where you can go back and say, the last 3 years, if I have not paid, you can check whether you've paid too much tax, and if so, they will give it you back. So that's all about saying it's our job to be fair. It's our job to have a tax system that makes it easy for people that want to pay tax. And then finally, at the top of the pyramid, there are the people who are determined to not pay tax. And a lot of jurisdictions actually measure the effectiveness of that by how many dollars they spend in order to collect a certain amount of tax. So that would be an example where we've sort of designed a whole system to maximise the amount of tax while making it as easy as possible for people to do what they're legally obliged to do. You can never say monitoring and evaluation is finished. You can look to improve because you've got a program or an organisation or an institution that is in difficulty or in a failed state. The journey that we like to put the institutions through is a movement towards self-evaluation. The most effective systems are those which don't require central oversight. You make sure they know how to put their clothes on, you make sure they know how to brush their hair and brush their teeth, they look after themselves, and then as time comes on, they have to learn how to do monitoring and evaluation for themselves. And so it is a bit of a journey like that. And certainly in our education sector, which I know quite a lot about, one of the things that we're starting to look at is has that school built enough ability to do self-evaluation? And as I said, the potential for the new technology and the community to participate in evaluation of programs, I think, is an exciting new challenge that we're only just starting to think about what it means. To gather data, the area, as I say, that's just starting to come forward is using the community to evaluate rather than only the professionals and only the specialists. Just yesterday, actually, we published a catalogue of government data for a whole range of purposes, and rather than just government being the people that analyse that data, and if other people were to look at the raw data, then they would come up with different answers from the data. So, as I say, just yesterday we launched a website called data.gov.nz, which has got a catalogue of all government data that is available, publicly available, that people can take and then they can use in order to do their own analysis. We know that children that come from poor housing with health problems will not do as well at school. So I think the big surge that we're likely to see over the next 12 to 18 months is pushing more government data out there so that the communities can start making sense of the information that was previously held. And you see that the changes, as people get wealthier, they spend more money on health, and therefore they are more likely to live longer. I mean, there is a body of professional knowledge around M&E, and so clearly the literature and the training in public management allows people to tap into that. But I also think there's an emerging sense of innovation that comes out of the way technology is being used. There was a contest that was run in the US called Apps for America, and what we saw there was thousands of people in their own time writing software programs to look at government data and present it in new ways. One interesting one was the correlation between violent crime and liquor outlets. The places where there was more liquor outlets, there was more violent crime. So violent crime and alcohol, close correlation. The police probably knew that, but there's nothing like actually seeing the data. I think that's the community building capability itself. And what there is evolving and developing is a network, a global network of people who are doing this stuff. Government's role with this other community base is just to let it rip. While it's out there happening, it's the most exciting area of development in M&E that I think we've seen in the last 10 years. It's hard for people who run programs in government to admit that their program hasn't been as successful as they wanted. Often there's an agreement that there's some things that we're not going to publish, so pretending that's not there doesn't help anybody. I've always been one that says, if the facts are there, let's confront them, let's look at them, let's work out what we're going to do about them. But that, I know, is a big challenge for institutions, individuals, and the people who are running the programs. The other challenge is that often it's more exciting to get onto the next program rather than working out how good the program is that you've just done. Because so often the loop of plan, design, implement, evaluate sort of stops around about the implementation stage, and then people will say, oh well, we've done that, but you don't know the results until you've seen the end result. Unfortunately, that bit is the least sexy of the whole spectrum, so quite often it gets dropped off. Try and be like a child. Learn from others. Build a network of the people that you're working in the similar vein as, which is why this event is so good, because we're actually networking with other people who are confronting the same ideas in their own life. It's not just about return. It's not just about profitability, it's about customer satisfaction. So look and be inquisitive about where you can pull information from in order to improve the performance of your own M&E systems. I think the New Zealand public management system has been been at the forefront of how do we get better government for probably about 20 years. We did some massive reforms in the late 80s that moved us from a centralised bureaucracy through to theoretically an agile, nimble, flexible, responsive, high-performing government organisation. Since then, we've been pushing out into specific things that've been picked up. I can't think of one individual. There are times when you don't know where the ideas come from. You're working collaboratively across the community, within New Zealand, within Asia Pacific, within the OECD, working through with the World Bank, and ideas emerge from discussions.